Hi folks, this is Glenn Guy from the Travel Photography Guru. I thought I'd spend a few moments today talking through an idea I had in relation to helping to build a portfolio of images from a larger series of shots you may have made on a holiday or vacation. And as an example, I've chosen a series of images from Huangshan or Yellow Mountain. This is a fantastic place for landscape photography that I visited in January 2011. Now, I was on the mountain for 5 days, but really just for 3, because I arrived late on the first day and left quite early on the 5th day. But I did nevertheless have 3 full days of journeying and photography on the mountain, and it was spectacular. Sublime is probably a better word to use. The light was subdued because it was winter. There was heavy cloud cover, 99% of the time, but it was overall a blanket of white cloud. So the light was actually very soft and just superb for photography. Some problems I had along the way though. With the cloud came heavy mist, so from time to time large areas of landscape would just disappear in front of me, and I would just walk through a wall of mist. But it was quite surreal, quite ethereal, quite beautiful really to experience that. It was just a wonderful, wonderful tour that I undertook on my own. So let's have a look at some of the images, and we'll talk about this notion of building a portfolio as we go. I guess this would be a good sort of image to open a presentation or a portfolio, because it does look very much like an opening or welcoming shot. Now, you have to do a lot of walking on Huangshan. You can climb the mountain via steps and descend in the same way. Because I had limited time and I wanted to spend all my time on the mountain photographing, and in addition to that I was carrying quite a bit of luggage, mainly for the camera gear, but also mainly warm clothing. Because of having to carry all that extra weight, I wanted to try to enjoy the trip as much as possible, so I decided to use the cable car going both up and down. Nevertheless, when you're on the top of the mountain, and that you use that term loosely, when you're on the top of the mountain, you are walking along flat areas, you're ascending series of steps, and then you're descending steps. So it's a little bit like, I suppose, going to a rainforest and visiting a waterfall, where you'll have to climb down the steps to get to the base of the fall and then back up again. So sometimes you're climbing for no more than a minute, and then there's a flat section. Other times you might be climbing for several minutes. But I wouldn't say it's easy unless you're very, very fit. Personally, I hate having to climb, and I'm not all that good at going down steep hills for long periods of time either. But on the flats, I can walk and have 20-30 kilometers at a time. That's not really a major issue for me. And I was carrying a lot of luggage, as I said, which did make it harder. Nevertheless, someone with quite average fitness like myself, it was still very, very doable. Because it was the first trip, next time I go back, the organisation, it will be a little better, and I'll only really be taking most of the time just the camera gear out with me, and it'll be significantly more fun and therefore less physically taxing. So you can see the steps winding up the hill, and then you get to the top, and they would either flatten out or go down again. And you notice that the snow's piled up in this particular image over the steps. Now that's because, as well as the main path which leads over the mountain, over the top of the mountain from hotel to hotel, there's also a number of side tracks, and I'm always one for a little bit of a diversion where there's time, and those side tracks are not maintained in quite the same way. By that I mean that there are sweepers who are on the tracks, and they're actually sweeping them on a daily basis, the major tracks. so to keep the ice and snow off them. And they do a very, very good job at that. But the minor tracks, the side tracks, well, because of the lower levels of tourism during the winter months, they tend to be left alone. So there's a little bit more snow, but I just didn't have any problems on those side tracks. And the great advantage is you have the landscape largely to yourself. There would be hours on end when I would be wandering around on these tracks and paths and just not meet anyone else, and it was fantastic for landscape and nature photography. So how do we go about building a portfolio? Well, particularly in the days of digital, we all shoot many more shots than we would have in the days of film, but I'm really kind of old school. I don't shoot anywhere near as much as many other photographers that I know, particularly those who have really entered photography in the digital age. I still work closer to the way I used to shoot with film. Nevertheless, I do shoot more than I used to. But here's how I would go about it. Once you've got all these shots, you shouldn't be afraid to work intuitively. And by that I mean just work through them, process them. Once you've had a reasonable look at them and have processed a lot of the photos, you'll get a bit of an idea for what's working for you. The next thing to do would be to rate them. So you might rate them via flags or stars. I think that the star rating system on programs such as Adobe Lightroom is fantastic. I'm using ratings generally from 1 to 3. The way I tend to work it is that 3 is an image that is worth processing and worth coming back and having another go at. I mean, most of the images will be processed, so they look okay, but if the image warrants closer attention, maybe more processing, I'll give it a 3-star. If I really think it's a fantastic image, I'll give it a 4-star. And out of a day's shoot, I might end up with a handful of 4-star images. Personally, I very rarely use the 5-star. I would say that if I've found an image that I think is really, really strong, of course I'll give it a 5-star. But for me, if I've been shooting on a trip for say a month, once I've got my 3 stars, and I then come back to those images, I call them up via, through the metadata. I'll say, show me my 3 stars. I'll then decide which of those are the very best. They'll be my 4-star images. And then I'll say to myself, well, if someone says, show me your pictures out of, say, 5 or 10,000 shots, I might show them just 20. Well, they will be my 5-star images. Because, it's no different to the old days with the slideshow when, Dad or Granddad would show you every single shot he made, and really it dilutes the value of your best photographs when you do that. So if someone says, show me your best shots of China, I would rarely show more than 20. In fact, if I can get away with showing 10 or a dozen, I think you'll be much more successful, because you want to get the wow factor with every image you show. To go about the process, what am I doing? Well, I'm editing out my least successful images. So in Lightroom, I might hit the delete key straight away if it's just a terrible photo, but usually I'll use a 1 or a 2-star. So 2-star means it's a backup image, I suppose, one that I might come back to and reconsider. 1 is a definite loser. It hasn't worked for whatever reason. It may be unsharp, the camera may have fired accidentally, it may be a shot that is just plain boring. And I have great delight in eliminating shots that aren't successful. Now, once you've edited down to your, done the initial edit, down to, I suppose, your 2 and 3-star images, this is when you would call up your 3-star images and just move them around on your desktop. Now, so the software will allow you to do this. For instance, I would often then move the 3 stars into collections in Lightroom. So this will make sense if you're a Lightroom user. I'll then just move the images around and get to have a feeling for similarities and differences. And I might find that amongst the images made on the mountain, for instance, that there are 2 or 3 distinct bodies of work that are coming out. So I'll often separate those into separate bodies of work, separate portfolios, if you like. And by doing so, you actually discover what it is you've photographed. So yes, I was on Yellow Mountain, but gee, I've discovered that I've actually been photographing, in this case, pathways. And of course, there are many ways that we use pathways. We go up, we go across, we go down, we can go through, we can go around. So the pathway actually becomes a bit of a narrative for the journey, and indeed a metaphor for the journey. And pathways, hopefully, lead us to somewhere. In this case, pretty literally, to a hotel. So if you're staying on Yellow Mountain, this is one of the hotels that you could stay at. From memory, there's 5 or 6, and I stayed at 3 of them. I did quite a lot of research to determine which I felt were the best hotels, and in each case I was very happy. Here's a view from the window of the hotel. As you can see, the blanket of fog has moved in, you know, but it does allow you to approach your photography in a different way. So here's a much more abstract image. It probably looks terribly cold, but I wasn't cold at all. You know, I've got appropriate clothing, and you know, I'm moving around when I'm outside, and I wasn't cold at all. And inside the hotels, they were comfortable and warm. The food was good. I had absolutely no complaints at all. Those pathways, getting up very early in the morning and heading out for a sunrise, you know, you're going to be out there before the sweepers. So they haven't yet had a chance to sweep the pathways after the night before, when it's quite possibly snowed. And there were just a couple tunnels, or one in particular that I remember, and it, you know, only took about 2 minutes to walk through it. But I guess it's a place where moisture builds up. So this was it was a cold environment walking through that tunnel, and there was a little bit of ice, thus the hand railings. But this is about as precarious as it gets, and you know, just taking your time, you're out of that area in about 2 minutes, no problem at all. And at the end of the tunnel, there's hope. There's possibilities. And this is, I mean, I'm not showing you in this particular portfolio my best images from Yellow Mountain. This is just an exploration of the idea of how to build a portfolio. And, you know, the topic in question, the theme in question is pathways. So there are some nice shots, but again, they're not my best shots. I'll come to those over the next week or so. And here's the mist again, and you might be able to see behind me is this lovely natural structure, a mountain peak, but it's barely visible. And you know, I'm pretty patient, so I'll sit it out and wait. But often, I mean, it's in the lap of the gods, really. The mist will part, and you'll get an incredibly beautiful image, or it won't. Fortunately, if you give yourself enough time on the mountain, whilst you may not be able to photograph everything due to weather, you will be able to photograph many beautiful spots. And again, the mist, when it does come, provides you with other opportunities. So that was me with about 5 layers of clothing on. And you know, as I say, when the mist passed, this is another location, but it was a similar event. It was virtually covered in mist. I could see very, very little, but I just felt that it was a good spot to hang out. So I waited about 10 minutes from memory, and early morning light, I was lucky enough to catch this image.